Right then everyone, this is a sad video to have to make and one that I hoped I wouldn't have to make anytime soon, but I think the last few weeks it has been coming and it's not entirely a surprise. And that is that Nuno Espirito Santo is no longer the Nottingham Forest manager. I don't know how to feel about this. I don't think I feel like I did with Cooper. With Cooper, I think because he was at the time the only manager that I think, well, he was the only manager that had ever actually made Forest be successful in my lifetime. I think it hurt a lot more. And maybe because we've been through that, it's kind of like we know what to expect now. And with this, I'm very upset about it and, a bit angry about it. But I'm just feeling a bit subdued really at the moment. And I think maybe it's one of the fact we expected it to happen. So it doesn't feel quite the same. It's a weird way to see a manager go. Normally it's when results are really bad and, you're losing and losing and losing every week. It's toxic in every single sense. But I don't think you can say the last few months have been completely toxic. And that's the only emotion that we've felt. Because of the great summer transfer window we've had, the opening day win against Brentford was unbelievable. But was that just a one-off? I think it might have been, because I think the bigger picture, you go back to mid-April when we lost to Everton at home. Really, since that moment, Forest have been pretty awful for 4 or 5 months now. We've been really quite bad most games since April. And there's only been the win at Spurs, the win at West Ham last season, the win against Brentford. And then you take into account the horrific pre-season we've had. We haven't been very good for a while. So when you look at the form, yeah, it does kind of play its part. And I think that is a reason. But I think the main thing is obviously the off-the-field stuff, the Edu thing. Nuno being very public about it, which, especially for somebody like Nuno, you don't normally see. He'd never really been that vocal before. So that makes it particularly difficult, I think, to process the fact that it isn't just a results thing. That's a secondary thing in this regard. And obviously the last game for Nuno was a horrific game that I think would have absolutely seen most managers be sacked off the back of previously bad run of form. But we'd won and drew the first 2 games before that. So, based off just purely that, it's not what you'd expect to happen. But that game, absolutely, you can now see why we played like that. I don't think we can really be too worried now about that performance from the players. That was obviously just a thing to do with Nuno. I think it was just West Ham being better on the day, but I think at that stage the players probably knew that it was coming to an end too, and that's why it didn't work. That's why the subs happened like they did. Nuno wanted out, and that's what's really sad, is the fact that Nuno clearly didn't want to be here come the end. And I think that might be why, in a way, we didn't see him do any interviews over pre-season. Maybe he didn't want to talk about the situation at the club, and it wasn't until the week the season started that he'd then have to do interviews that we actually heard from him. And every time we have done it, it's been this sceptical, very weird sort of atmosphere around him of like, does this guy want to be here? Why would you say that in person and out loud in public where everyone can hear it? So really frustrating way to see it end, but I think it was inevitable in the end. I cannot thank him enough for what he's done as Nottingham Forest manager. He has given me and so many people the chance to see Forest play in Europe. And to so many of us, that's the first. To so many more of us, it's the first time in 30 years they're going to see us playing there after so many years away. It's special regardless. And last season, he's also allowed me to see Forest play by far and away the best football I've ever seen a Forest side play. For us to be riding high in 3rd place for half the season, that run over Christmas was utterly surreal. It was surreal at the time. It was like, this can't last forever. But that we feel a long way off that now, that run of form. That run of form, you cannot understand how outrageous that was. Like, we were unbelievably good during that run of form. I think it was 7 wins in a row. 1 game we didn't win in 9, and that was against Liverpool, and we took the lead in that one too. Just an unbelievable run of games. But really, since that Bournemouth game, the form kind of deteriorated last season slowly. The fixtures piled on, not signing players in January, it all kind of added up, but we were still going strong, again, up until about Easter. But then we lost that Everton game, and then the wheels really fell off. And I don't think that was totally on Nuno or the players. It was just an overall build-up of just fatigue and expectation, and it just all got too much. And the Marinakis thing that happened against Leicester, I don't think that helped things. I think from that moment, there's kind of been writing on the wall sort of thing that, well, if something goes wrong now, surely he can't be too safe in his job. But ultimately, he gave him a new contract over the summer. And I think new contracts clearly mean nothing, because you sign a new contract, you're gone within months. It happened with Sabri Lamouchi. He signed a new deal, I think, in June. He was sacked by September, exactly the same as Nuno. Contracts mean nothing in football, and this is why I don't think you can never be too safe with things. But who's next? Well, in the ever-changing nature of football, I'm having to re-record this segment less than an hour after I recorded what you've just seen, because we've had further confirmation of what might very well be happening next in terms of who replaces Nuno. There's been talk of Postecoglou, there's been talk of Irola from Bournemouth, Glasner from Crystal Palace, Marco Silva from Fulham, Pochettino, of course, he's the USA manager, Jose Mourinho, who was, of course, recently at Fenerbahce. Well, I was going to talk about who might very well be the best candidate, but it looks like we may very well have already decided that, because there's strong reports from the Telegraph at least saying that it is going to be Ange Postecoglou. Get your thoughts in the comments on that. I know I only just mentioned it like 5 minutes in, but I thought I'd talk about Nuno first. And this isn't even confirmed yet, so it's just speculation at the moment. But Postecoglou, Ange looks like he's going to be our next manager. Part of me, I really love that. I don't know, part of me loves that. A lot of me really doesn't like it and is really nervous about how that goes. Because at the end of the day, as much as I like Ange and I respect him a lot, I really do as a person, he comes across very well. And I kind of felt sorry for him last season with all the hate he got, but I think he got hate for a reason ultimately, because he made a Spurs side far more valuable than our Forest team, finished 17th in the Premier League. This is a team that normally seen as a big six side. They're always at the top end of the table. They came 17th. And it's only because the bottom three were so bad that they weren't in a genuine relegation battle. So I've got to be a bit concerned by that. When he's joining a team that have only had one season away from the relegation zone, he made a top side be near the relegation zone. And a Europa League ultimately papered over the cracks. It gave Spurs a trophy for the first time in 17 years, I believe. That's unbelievable. You've got to be happy with that. And I thought it was harsh sacking him after doing that. But at the same time, with the season they had in the league, it also made sense. So I've got to be nervous about that. And if we think that Nuno is stubborn at times with the way he played, Ange is even more stubborn. Everybody knows that he didn't change his ways at Spurs. He'd always stick to the same tactic of playing a high line and, trying to play entertaining football. And that's great. You want that. But it doesn't always work if you try and do that. And I have a really bad feeling that a rock-solid defence that we had last season, and even the first 2 games this season, could very well become extremely leaky. And that concerns me. Because, I'm literally thinking on the spot now. We are in the Europa League. We're hiring the manager that won the Europa League last season. That alone, I should be extremely happy and excited by that. That's incredible. But I can't ignore the way he is as a manager and how they did in the league. And I know the season before they still came, well, in the Europa League spot, right? That's good. So maybe last season was just a one-off. It was more what was happening at Spurs behind the scenes. Daniel Levy's no longer the owner, so that might very well have been connected to it. I think it was, the injuries. There was a lot of bad luck ultimately with Ange. And for that reason, maybe I'm talking myself into it right now, I don't think it is a disaster if we appoint Ange, but I think that we've got every right to be a bit sceptical. We've got to be. High line, suddenly you're going to have all these great defensive displays be quite a rarity. I just don't think we're going to keep many clean sheets. Everyone knew how Spurs played and it was easy to beat them. And we beat Spurs last season twice, both times pretty easily, if we're being honest. So, yeah. Now that I'm saying it, part of me really kind of wouldn't mind it. But equally, I don't think it's an upgrade on Nuno, and I've got to be a bit sceptical and nervous about it too. I was going to talk about the other managers, but it looks like Postecoglou is going to be the next Nottingham Forest manager. I think it's pretty close. It looks like it's going to be an 18-month contract. He'll be in charge for Arsenal, and yeah, interesting. Yeah, I would have loved Marco Silva. I would have loved Gazna. I would have loved Areola. Pochettino or Mourinho would have been absolutely insane to have a manager of their calibre, but maybe not what we need. But I think all that's quickly becoming redundant now. Get your thoughts in the comments. And up the Reds.